you for coming all the way out to the ends of the earth in Brooklyn. We don't usually do stuff out here, but thank you for coming. My name is Shina Wheel. I'm the founder of MIS, and for those of you that don't know, MIS is a national networking organization for people of color who work in the sports industry at almost like 1,000 members right now across the country. So we got slides and stuff up, so I'm going to talk more about that. But if you're interested, come talk to me afterwards, and definitely visit our website, hit us up on Instagram, all that fun stuff. I'm going to pass it over to Kiana.
Hi everyone, good evening. My name is Kiana Sinclair. I am on the board for NAMIC New York. For those that don't know NAMIC, that stands for the National Association of Multi-Ethnicities in Media and Communications. So we call it NAMIC, nice and short. What we do is we like to build each other up and promote folks of color in the media and communications space. And we like to put on events like this, partner with our amazing friends, and try and give you the best opportunities that you can. So we have amazing panelists tonight. Please enjoy the content.
And this is our second event together.
Yes.
We're 2 for 2, so check them out. All right, we're gonna get started because we're a little bit late. So I just want to start out by introducing my 2 panelists, Andria Johnson and Jasmine Roseboro. I'm gonna let them give a quick blurb about themselves because they can do it better than me.
Thank you. So I've been sitting there, so I'm a little crazy, but hi, I'm Andria. I am a senior recruiter at the National Basketball Association. I've been with the company going on 3 years now, and I'm excited to be here.
Hi, I'm Jasmine Roseboro. I am was a financial analyst for Universal McCann. Now I'm a strategist for Universal McCann, but I worked there for about 3.5 years in finance. I'm really excited to be here and share from a finance perspective, negotiating tactics.
And I just want to say that I chose these 2 women specifically, one, because they're both my best friends, and secondly, both have helped me in negotiations, and even recently, Andrea has helped me with the negotiation. She helped me get a lot more money than was urgently offered, so we're here to just share our keys and hopefully ask for more money in 2019. So, let's get to the point, because that's the goal. Okay, so this is supposed to be very casual, just like when we were at Margaritas, talking about how people are really out here securing the bag, except us. So just want to start off by having you guys talk a little bit about how do you even ask? Because I feel like that's something that most of us don't do, because we are kind of told, especially if your parents are kind of old school, just be grateful that you got a job, don't make it hot. So, how do we get to that point where we're like, I need more money, let me go ask for more money?
Sure. So, in a situation of, let's say you already have a job and it's been like 1.5 years, and you're like, why hasn't my salary increased? I would say definitely don't hesitate to set up a conversation with your supervisor, your manager, whoever it is. I know in my experience, there's a lot of chatter behind the scenes as far as on the actual teams that people aren't happy with their salary, but your peers aren't going to be able to do anything about it. Definitely set up a meeting with your manager. I don't think anyone's going to fault you for taking your salary goals seriously.
So are you talking for applying for a job or currently employed?
You can touch on both.
Okay, so currently employed, I agree 100%. You should definitely, if you don't have those touch points, but also I think the key to it is to have those touch points multiple times during the year, because you want to always try to gauge, what is my progress? How can I be successful? Where are these metrics? Because if at the end of the year, or whatever your end time may be, you want to have proof that you can bring and say, okay, look, this is what my goals were, this is what I've done, this is what you said would be successful, so, now that I've accomplished all these things, why haven't I, or, what's causing me from getting a raise? In terms of being an internal or external applicant, I think that you should know going into it. So whenever, at the time that you agree to take a call with the recruiter or anyone from any HR in the company, you should already know what you want to make in your next role. There's no need to even take a call if you haven't done that research, because now with the New York law, we can't ask what you currently make. Their question is going to be, what does it take for you to make the next move? Or what are you expecting in your next career? And so if you can't answer that question clearly, then you're leaving it up to them. Never say I'm open. Like, that is like rule number one, never say I'm open. You gotta have a number. Now, if you want to delay that a little bit later, you may say, I have a number in mind, but I would like to talk further about the role, can we discuss it at a later time? But I think you have to always have something in mind. And I'm a straight shooter. I don't want to play the negotiation game back and forth with anybody, especially not our candidates. So you tell me what you want from the beginning, and then that way it's not for me to go to the business and say, hey, this person only wants this amount, this is all we got to pay them. It's so that your recruiter and the HR team can be the advocate for you. So not only are we the advocate for the business, but we're also the advocate for the candidates. We want to make sure that there's synergy and it's a good mutual fit. But if you're not equipping me with what I need so that I can make the case for you if need be, then it's going to end up not being likely what you want.
So on that note, how do we know what to ask for? I think that's something that a lot of us aren't aware of. And I mean, we've had this conversation, like I was notorious for underballing myself because it's like, I don't want to be not considered anymore because I'm asking for too much. So how do we know, where can we find resources to find out what the numbers are, what the company's numbers are? What can we do?
So first, never lowball yourself, because I would tell you this, if a company decides not to pursue you because they felt like your salary was just too high, either one, they can't afford you, or two, that's not a company you want to work for. So never ever say, oh, let me lowball so I can get in the door, because you're setting yourself back from the start. In terms of finding company data, that's going to be a little difficult because most of that is not public knowledge. So one of my tricks of the trade is always have conversations. So how many people have LinkedIn? Okay, so on LinkedIn, there's a way for you to check that you're open to opportunities. You can put you're a passive candidate, you can put that you're looking to move immediately, that you're not necessarily looking to move, but you're always open. You should always be having conversations, because that's how you determine what the market share and the market value is for your role. So my boss, she knows I'm talking to any and everybody that reach out to me, because if I find out that all these companies are wanting to pay me this much and you're only paying me this much, then there's a problem. There's a big problem. And so now I can go to her and say, look, if you were to bring somebody off the street with the same skill sets that I have, doing the same job, this is what you would have to pay them, because this is what the market is telling me, because I've had conversations with these other companies. So don't use Glassdoor, that stuff is fake, like for real. Pay scale, that stuff is fake because it's voluntary. And we all know nobody goes to give a survey when they're happy. It's always when you're mad. So everybody on Glassdoor, they're angry, or whatever, so that's not real. Like, I've had people tell me, we were like relocating someone from North Carolina, he's like, well, I went online and they said the cost of living is 200% more than what I'm paying here, so he was making like 80 and he wanted 200K. It doesn't work like that. Now you sound crazy. So, the way to kind of build your own market share is like, even if you're not looking for a position, always have the conversations, because in your mind, you need to know what the external market is valuing your skill set at.
And that's definitely my go-to, like personally, even if I'm not looking, I am looking, because I don't know if it's just like me, but I don't like to put all my eggs in one basket. So I am always looking for opportunities, and if someone reaches out to me and says, hey, I want to pay you like 50 grand more for the same thing you're doing now, then I'm going to take that to my people and be like, what's up? So.
And Jasmine, I'm actually going to point this question to you as someone who worked on the finance side. So you saw kind of like what companies had in the arsenal. From a finance perspective, in terms of like cushion money, housing expenses, and all that fun stuff that we didn't even know we could ask for. So what are some of the things that, as a finance professional, you've seen that people have asked for, and that companies have? And then Andrea, can you touch on, from an HR perspective, what's the best way to go about asking for those extras?
Sure. So I know in my experience, for literally all of our positions, what our budget was about 10K higher than what we were telling the candidates that it was, right? So that right there, like, should give you enough to just go in 10K higher than whatever someone's telling you it is.
Jasmine definitely told me I got shafted after I left.
Yeah.
Talking about salary. I told her what I was making. She was like,
I was
they
like,
shafted you.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, my bad. I didn't know you. But so the 10K higher like buffer, that's pretty standard. As far as things that people ask for, I've seen people asking for, if you can't increase your actual salary, I have seen people ask for gym memberships. I've seen them ask for parking. One woman who I hope to be one day came in, negotiated a higher salary, negotiated a raise within a year, and somehow negotiated that we pay her housing costs for 2 years in Tribeca. Which was about $25,000 a month for 2 years.
Was she for a housing start?
She was senior, but she wasn't like CMO, CFO, CEO, no. She was the SVP. And I talked to her about it, right? And because I had to. I was astounded. I'm like, how are you doing this? And she was like, I asked. But I was like, oh, okay, cool. So definitely, if you can't get, the money that's actually going in your paycheck, increase. Don't feel bad about asking for extras.
How do you know what's reasonable to ask for, like, so they don't balk at you and be like, oh, you popping?
I mean, I think part of that is kind of feeling how the conversation is going, and also like knowing realistically for your level, where you're at. Like, if you're like a manager level person, maybe not asking for like housing, cost of housing adjustments, but certainly if you're a C-level executive, like asking for those kind of overarching things like stock options. I've also seen people ask for like additional time off, or like one woman, she only worked 3 days a week.
Was that my ex-boss? Because I never saw her.
No. She just doesn't work.
Because I think I saw her maybe a total of 3 times my entire time there.
So I think there's 2 parts to this. One, when you ask them for whatever salary in the first conversation, if they give you that, be grateful. I mean, because as a recruiter, the thing I hate the most is someone says, if I ask them, what is it going to take for you to make this move? Like, all in, like, are you walking away from bonuses? Like, tell me everything it's going to take. And they say, I need 150. Okay, come back with an offer, 150. They're like, well, actually, what about this? And I'm also leaving this, and I'm also leaving this. At that point, I'm annoyed. And if your recruiter is annoyed, then they go tell the business, we don't need to hire this person. And the business is non-scientific, they'll be like, okay, like, I trust you. So whatever you ask for, that's why, going back to the first point, you gotta know when you're starting the conversations, because whatever you ask for, if they give it to you, then you technically don't have to negotiate that point because you've already gotten it. In terms of asking for other things, it just kind of depends on the company and what they can offer. So the first part would be to ask them for what their comprehensive benefits are, and then what they offer. So, for example, at my job, we have what we call an India Assist program, where you can work from home 1 day a week. Well, we have some people that will commute from further places, and in their current companies, they work from home 2 days a week. So they're like, okay, well, you offer this, but this is what I currently have, so can I have this? And then always have a reason, like a rhyme or reason. So I don't want to work from home 2 days a week just because I want to. It may be, right now I have little kids, and so I worked out with this, company, this is what I can do. Because if you have a reason other than just because I want it, then companies are more prone to be like, okay, let me work with this person. And then things like, gym memberships and things like that, like some companies don't offer it, but when you have that initial conversation with the recruiter or hiring manager, however the company is, if they offer you the offer, don't immediately say yes unless they give you what you asked for. Don't immediately say yes. Take time to really think about it. And I'm an advocate of like visually seeing things and like write everything down that you want. And then you can go back and say, do you have any programs that apply to this? So, some companies won't let you negotiate extra vacation days. Well, but it's all about, you should only have like that one kind of comprehensive conversation. Don't keep going back and forth and keep adding stuff to kind of see what you can get, because then it just looks bad.
And to that point, what would you say is like the tipping point to where you're like, all right, maybe I should just chill now? So you don't like piss off your recruiter,
Yeah.
or what are the signs or what are the tips that you can give to be like, all right, you can go this far, keep it a little bit more, and then stop.
I think it's just kind of, you got to feel the vibe, and you have to, just kind of understand and be open, like put yourself in their shoes. Like if you were the hiring manager and someone was doing this to you, how would you feel? So that's why coming prepared is better, because as a recruiter, if I know up front I'm gonna have to pay a premium for this person, they're coming from this company that's giving them stock options, so we're gonna have to buy this out. Like if I know, then I'm, again, better equipped to advocate for you and to make sure you get everything you need. But if you've been going back and forth on emails, like I gave a guy an offer and it took him like almost 4 weeks to accept it. And at that point I was like, look, I don't even care no more. Like, you have to find somebody else to email because I'm done with this. So you just kind of have to feel the vibe. If you really kind of feel that you're being unreasonable and the time is going on and on, from the time that you get an offer, within a week, you should either have accepted it or declined it, because you should know by then if that's the right opportunity or not for you. If you are not getting it, and it's like a tug of war just to get what you deserve, then that's not a company you need to be at, because if it's a tug of war to get in there, once you get there, it's still going to be a tug of war. You're not going to be happy. So if you get to feel that vibe, then it's just better to stay patient where you're at and wait for the next opportunity.
Did you have anything to add?
Not from a finance perspective, I think.
So I think one of the things that a lot of us are scared about, and the reason why we're scared to ask, is because you feel like once you ask for more, then you have a target on your back. Is that something that you've seen that has been true? Or, because I mean, like, let's be realistic, Jasmine, we've talked about like our white counterparts and how they ask, and I remember you saying one time, like, someone was in your inbox every 6 months asking for a raise. We don't do things like that. So is that some of the things that you've seen that people are being paid a little bit more attention to when they've asked for money? Or they've asked for, some ridiculous things like a $25,000 a month housing stipend?
Definitely. I think that the people who are asking are the people who are getting, right? So, and to your point about having a target on your back, I think there's more of like an invisible target on your back if you don't ask for more, especially up front. And I know from our conversation before, I had mentioned there's a woman that I work with who has been there for years. She's a sweet, older Black woman, and her white counterpart makes considerably more than she does. They're at the exact same level. So, and I know that this person, like, she's looking to retire soon, but like, the fact of the matter is, not once has she ever brought that up to anyone and said, hey, like, I haven't gotten more than a 2% merit raise, like, in the past year, 2 years, or whatever, right? But the people who are constantly like, hey, it's been a year, I know that like some merit, because people in the office talk, you're not supposed to talk about salaries, fact of the matter is, they're gonna talk, right? So they're definitely like, what's up? And those are the people who end up getting covered in our merit cycles. I know from a finance perspective, like there are about 3 or 4 or so merit cycles where we try to cover everyone, but the people who have been vocal about their compensation are the people who, between HR and finance, when we sit down and start going through the numbers, like we make sure like these people are covered, because at the end of the day, especially if you're a valued employee, if you're a flight risk, like they're gonna cover you at the end of the day. So yeah.
Now, who do you go to? Do you go to your supervisor, or do you go to HR directly to see what the billable bracket is for somebody at your level with your experience?
I think it varies with company. If you have HR business partners that you work closely with, then you could definitely do that. Because the way my company is, all of the compensation, everything is handled in HR. We have a compensation team in HR, so people always come to either recruiters or the HR VPs, and they start the conversation there. So it really just kind of depends on the infrastructure of your company, but whoever typically kind of handles, whether it be finance or HR, then that's where you would start to have that conversation.
And I'm going to make this the last question so we can open it up for questions, because I do want this to be collaborative. I want people to be able to ask what they want. If you had top 3 things that you need to have in your ask, when you're asking for more money, what would you say?
Proof or reasoning why, and so I learned this from our CHRO. When you go to ask for a raise, promotion, anything, you gotta explain why. I would say market data research, so knowing what you're asking for and make sure that it makes sense. Everybody wants to make 300, 400K, but it doesn't make sense. So understanding your level and asking for what makes sense. And then I would also say, just confidence in yourself to know that, am I getting paid what I'm worth? And if you're at a company that's not, and going into that conversation, then you need to know and have a plan of what you're going to do if they come back and say no. So go in with, exactly what you want, reasoning, and then your mind made up on what you're going to do, so a plan for, either way which the company is going to go.
My number 1 top thing, I think, would be confidence, because even like in my experience, when I got the job at University of McCann, I was living in North Carolina and I wanted to move to New York. So when they offered me my salary, I was like, yep. And then in retrospect, I was like, I probably am worth a little bit more of it, because I still felt like I didn't have the media experience, I didn't have this, I didn't have that what they were offering me was like you said earlier, like you're just grateful to be there. It's having that confidence that like, I may not have this one little piece of experience, but like, I know I'm worth this, the experience I already have is worth this. So I think confidence goes a long way. Also, and I don't know if this is right to say, but I've noticed, and China, you will definitely know this from our office, so many things are political, right? And if no one knows who you are, it's going to be a lot more difficult for you to get what you want. So definitely making yourself known amongst the powers that be, so to speak, will go a long way. And when your name comes up in those conversations with leadership, in the meetings with HR and finance, like that will definitely help you out.
I agree, and to piggyback on that, so we have 2 offices, one in New York and one in New Jersey. Our New Jersey office is really more like IT, content. It's a couple HR people, and I was initially placed there, but our entire HR leadership team was in New York. And after a couple months in New Jersey, I was like, no, I gotta get to New York, because one, I am working my ass off here, and I'm in the office till 11 o'clock and don't nobody see it. So one, like, when they want me to pull video footage, if I be like, I work hard, they'll be like, okay. So no, I gotta get over with them. And then 2, I'm like, I need to see how they walk. I need to see how they talk. I need to see what they're looking at. I need to make sure that everybody in here knows my name. I need to make sure, and not just in my department. So I'm trying to meet with people who heads up legal, people who head up TiVo, the heads of marketing. Like, I need to make sure that everybody in this organization, that my name is being chattered in a good way. And so when those things happen, then you have people that are advocating for you that are not just in your department. And I think what we struggle with is we get so siloed and we're like, oh, if I do a really good job, then my boss is gonna do, your boss can only do so much because your boss has to work, but what about your boss's boss? Like, have they seen it? You know, can they advocate for you? And a lot of times in companies, they have like departmental pools. So it's like, who's the top of the department? That's who's gonna get it. So who are our top performers? How are, you know, so we have like 6 or 7 different verticals in our HR team. So if only the talent acquisition person is saying, Andria is a top performer, the comp team's gonna be like, yeah, well, we don't know. And then like the employee relations is gonna be like, well, we don't know. So I had to make sure that I'm having FaceTime with all of the VPs, all of the heads for all of these different verticals, because a lot of times when you come to year end, they're having these meetings together, the entire leadership team. So when they say, okay, what about Andrea? I need everybody to be like, she's a top performer, because then it's just that way, that's how you secure the bag.
That is our goal for 2019. Secure the bag. So I'm gonna open it up to questions. Lance in back. You have the screen, we have one mic.
All right.
How you guys cover like how to negotiate when you have a job and just entertaining, conversations, but could you touch on how to negotiate when you don't have a job and you really need something and like you're quick to take the first offer you get just because you're in that, that hungry situation, but you also know your value as well.
I think that's a difficult one because usually when you're in that position, a lot of the jobs that you apply for, you're overqualified for. And so while you have to take into consideration what your value is, you also have to take into consideration that there is a financial aspect in a budget that is associated with every single position. So what I see most often is someone with 15 years experience that's unemployed, they're like, oh, I'll take that position, it doesn't matter, it's like a 3 to 5 year out, and I'm like, okay, it's not really gonna work because one, I know you're only doing this to pay your bills, and so do the hiring managers, and I get it, because why, nobody wants to be homeless, 100% get it. It's still almost, it's a cost to the company to pay you because you know you're gonna leave. So I think in that situation, I mean, I don't really know how you can negotiate if you're taking a position that you know you probably really don't want, because my experience has been that typically people that are in that position, they're taking positions that are a lower level than what they really are. So there's no way that they're really gonna realistically be able to negotiate all the way up to what they feel like they should be paid.
What about if you are you've been in somewhere for a couple of years and you're trying to make a move, but should the expectation be that anytime you make a move and you're currently employed somewhere, you should be aiming for at least like X amount over what you're making, or what is the precedent for like making a lateral move financially and staying where you are?
So in terms of making a lateral move, before last month, I would have said like it's probably a safe bet to kind of keep your salary expectations close to the same. But in my experience, I recently just kind of made a lateral move into something that I basically have no experience in. But to our point about people knowing who you are and the right people having your name in their mouth. And by nature of my position, I'm working with the CFO, CEO. So I was able to move into a role that's essentially the same level that I'm at now, but at a slightly higher salary, right? So I think it goes back to a situational kind of thing. And if you can confidently say that even though you want to make this move, and maybe you don't have that experience, that you know you have that experience, and you know that you're gonna exceed those expectations in a year or in less than a year.
And I'll add to that too, because I recently pretty much made a lateral move. I think, like Andrea and Jasmine were saying, you kind of have to know the company. I knew this company had significantly more money, and the last company I was at was like known for underpaying people. I ain't gonna put them on blast, but you know, like I'm making $30,000 more for the same title. So, I mean, and again, like they say, Andrea, it just never hurts to ask. Because when I got the original offer, I was like, I don't want this. What should I say?
And the term lateral is used very, very loosely. So to her point, you gotta know where you're going and then what your learning curve is gonna be. Because while, you know, I may go to another role in HR, I still may not be, you know, my knowledge base may not be at that high level. So if I was going to another TA role, I'm like, no, you're gonna have to pay me a whole bunch more. But if I'm going to another role like an HR VP or a comp team or an employee relations, then it's like, what really is my bargaining power? Because I still gonna have a lot to learn, because really what I'm only bringing is institutional knowledge, and you know, so.
In the white?
I wanted to, you said that the budget, they usually offer 10K, well, the company we're coming from, 10K less than the budget. If the candidate came back with a counter offer that exceeds that budget and they had a good reason, would they still try to lowball you so that they fall within the budget, or would they, you know, come up?
I think it depends on if they even can go up. You know, so like, for instance, if, you know, we have to talk and they say, you want to make 175 and we offered you 160. Let me go back. Usually there is always a cushion, but I don't like to, like I said, I don't like to play the back and forth game. So I ask the candidate from the beginning. So if I know that we're going to eat up that cushion from the very beginning, that cushion is gone. So it is a situational thing. But typically they have a budget in mind, and if your ask is still outside of that cushion, it just kind of depends on, one, if the company is willing to pay a premium for you. And a lot of times in our space, we're not paying premiums for everybody. It has to be really specific, like data scientists and like things like that. Because you also have to consider that if you're getting offered, that's probably a really strong silver medalist that's, you know, waiting in the barrel. So it's like, do I really have a business case for paying 10K over what we budgeted for this role? So if that, so if that is really kind of what you want, it depends on the company, but if you're outside of the budget and over the cushion, I don't know that you'll be able to really get, you know, exactly what you want.
From a finance perspective,
Are we back?
From a finance perspective, I definitely agree. Like, it depends if we can go up, but for my company specifically, usually we can, and that's why we build in that buffer. Like, from a finance perspective, and I think there were, with our HR partners in the past, there's been some like animosity. So like,
because we cheat. If you tell me, I'm going to factor that buffer in from the very beginning.
So we don't even tell our HR partners about that buffer until the candidate counters. And then, so finance knows we can go up, but our HR team doesn't know that we can go up. Because at the end of the day, we have a bottom line to protect, so that's kind of why we keep that. But also, if the team has decided that they really want to pay a premium for you and they want you, then it has been my job to run the scenarios and figure out how we can make this happen. But again, that's not like for everyone. That's a very special case.
So, in a perfect world, I know you mentioned earlier that the company doesn't want us to talk amongst ourselves and peers about what we make as a salary. And I know earlier you mentioned, hey, you know, they can't do anything. But amongst our group, I feel like personally, sometimes that conversation should be had, because it allows you to have that proof saying, you know, Suzanne over here, you're doing the same thing I'm doing, and there's a complete gap. But then in another aspect, if I have people that come on and like, you know, hey, you're gonna come work where I'm working, this is what you need to be asking for because this X, Y, and Z. So in you all's opinion, do you think it's necessary or should or shouldn't as far as having that open communication about salaries?
From an HR perspective, yeah, that's a bad thing. And here's why. Because if you are doing the same job but you're a top performer, then when you get to like year end and it increases, like everybody's not getting the same increase. Somebody may get a 4%, somebody may get a 2, somebody may get a 0. And so then it creates animosity, jealousy between the team, and it just overall employee morale is just not good because even if you may come in at the same thing, everybody's never gonna stay equal. And so from an HR perspective, and it happens, I know it happens, but from an HR perspective, I would say it always gets pretty tricky when people talk about salary. Now, if you got a homegirl, you know, whatever, like I just say don't do it. I don't talk to my coworkers about it because in my mind, I choose to believe I'm the best performer on our team and I'm making the most. It's probably not true. And if I find out otherwise, I'm probably gonna wanna quit. So I don't have those conversations.
And Jasmine, I would like for you to share that story of when someone found out what others were making, if you can.
Well, I'm just thinking, which one was it?
So when that email was passed around.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so it happens a lot, actually. A lot more than you would think, at least in our office. But what ended up happening was a very senior level person made a mistake and sent salary information around to like his whole team. A woman found out that her male counterpart was making considerably more than she was. And essentially, we had no choice but to figure out how to right size her salary because her job, I mean, we work in advertising, but she's basically like an investment banker. Like no one can do her job. She like hedges for inflation and all this crazy stuff. So like we had no choice but to figure it out.
They didn't want those PR problems either.
And yeah, they didn't. They didn't want that lawsuit. So we figured it out. In my personal life, I don't talk with my coworkers either about what I'm making. My friends, like Shina, like some of my other friends, we don't work in the same discipline, so we've had those conversations. But I think it can be very useful, and I think it's very helpful in your personal life, and it's also taboo for some reason. But I think we as people, especially like people of color and women, need to be more open with each other about what we're making. Because even if you're not working in the same industry, like just knowing what someone that's around your age, around your same experience is making in the workforce is helpful. It's like me and my friends chat about it all the time. We may not come out and say like, oh, well, I'm making this much, but like we definitely talk about, oh, I got a raise, I'm up for a promotion, such and such. So just like be more open about it. So when I do go into my next salary negotiation, like I kind of have a little bit of ammunition from an external source. So yeah.
Next question.
Yeah, I think part of it is just like staying up to date on like the legislature and how it's changing. I would say New York is actually one of the states. I'm from Oklahoma and then I was in Georgia and they really don't care about employees like that. They would never ever pass a law like this. So I think that, they won't. So I think that just really trying to stay up to date on any kind of employment related legislation, and they have a lot of, New York is really good about posting stuff online and like making it where anybody can really understand it on their website. So definitely staying up to date on that and knowing, but I think the confidence piece also goes into it. So when they're asking you questions, if you ever feel uncomfortable about answering it, don't answer it. And if you feel like that worsens your chance, again, that's not a company you want to work for. Anything about salary, they cannot ask. I will say that the law only covers like current salary, like bonus, but they can ask you for like deferred stock options, things like that. And then they can ask for proof and details on that. Additionally, if you are, and for that, because anybody can say, oh, well, I have, you know, so many hundreds of $1,000s in stock that I'm going to lose if I walk away. So in order for our confident finance team to actually kind of figure out how we can buy this out, you'll have to have some kind of proof. And then the sign-on bonus, they can't really ask for proof because there's really no way unless you give them like a check stub or something. But just understanding legally what they can and can't ask and being confident about it. And again, if you feel uncomfortable at any chance, then at any point during the interview, definitely vocalize that. And if they have a problem with that, then yeah, that's probably not a place because it's probably 10 times worse if you would start there.
Can you talk a little bit about when you have multiple offers and how you can best use them to help you negotiations?
Oh, yeah, so that's fun. It's like the best thing to have. So when you have multiple offers, here's the thing. Don't try to pit them against each other because that could definitely work and you don't want to draw things out. So I would say if you're talking to a recruiter, definitely if you're interviewing at other places, be upfront with that and let them know because nobody's going to tell anyone that's in the market that they can't interview anywhere else. If anything, it can help you because 9 times out of 10, they may come out with their strongest offer from the beginning just to kind of alleviate the competition. But if you have other offers, I would say it's probably going to come down to not even money because you may get the same thing at each one. You're going to want to look at what their benefits package looks like and you'll want to partner with the team to see if they can even give you like numbers on, what your premiums would be, what does your vacation time look like, what does parental leave look like things that you don't typically think to ask for in an interview. You'll want to comprehensively compare all, 2 or 3 that you have. But again, from the time that you get an offer from one company, if it goes past a week before you either accept or decline, then it just starts to kind of look bad. And like, did this person even really want the job? And you never want to make it look like you're playing a game. So, you need to know which job you prefer over the other, if any, and then make sure that you're definitely cultivating at least a relationship with your top person. And then just saying, and if you get another offer, so, I offered a guy, and we were putting him in our New Jersey office. We could have put him in either office, we put him in the New Jersey office. And I was getting ready to offer him, and he called me, and he's like, look, I don't want to do this final interview because I don't want to waste your time. I got this other offer. And I was like, so what if I told you I was going to offer you this? And he's like, well, that's great, but then they were going to put me in New York. I'm like, well, what if I tell you I can put you in New York? And so he was like, okay, what all can you do? So I was like, this is what I was going to offer you. And so he's like, okay, deal, done. And then he cut the other group off literally within 24 hours. So you want to make it quick, never drag it out. And compare everything comprehensively before you accept one offer over the other because monetarily, cash, it may look like one is better, and then you find out they have a terrible insurance company, or you only get medical and you got to get your own dental and vision, things like that, which can end up actually being a bigger cost to you in the end.
So how do you start that conversation without pitting them against each other or making it seem like you're trying to play a game with them?
I would say, like I said, just be open from the beginning, so whenever you talk to the recruiter, let them know, look, I'm in a couple of interview processes right now, just want to be upfront, if some are getting closer to the end, I'm in final stages at this round, honesty, is the best policy. I hate it when I get to the end of the interview process and the candidate tells me, well, actually, I just interviewed at this place. I'm like, why didn't you let me know? I'm not going to tell you not to. So you definitely just want to be open from the beginning and let them know. And then when you get to the end, if you have an offer, then you can ask that company, can you give me a couple days because I'm finishing up another process? Again, honesty, and then they'll say, yeah. Nobody will tell you have to answer immediately. And then immediately contact the other company and say, hey, I just got an offer. Can you let me know if this, process is wrapping up? So just being open and honest about it, and if they have a problem with it, then I would be like, oh, this is sorry.
This will be the last question, or last, 4 questions. I know that you said that you're always passively looking and entertaining conversations for other jobs. How do you, if someone offers you something more, but you don't mind staying where you are, how do you open up that conversation with your current boss or supervisor to say, hey, I wasn't looking, but somebody offered me this, can you match it, without it being awkward or uncomfortable? Or them feeling like, you're trying to be underhandedly, trying, get more balance? Yeah.
I think, in my experience, I've never had an awkward salary because I feel like it's pretty objective, or it should be. I should feel awkward going to my supervisor and talking about my salary. Ultimately, I feel like my supervisor should want me to achieve both my professional and salary goals as much as I want to. And if they don't, then that's probably not an organization culture I even want to be a part of. So I think it's really a matter of just setting up, hey, I want to put some time in your calendar. I have a few things I want to talk to you about. Really casual, and just say, someone reached out to me. They're saying that they want to offer me such and such XYZ or whatever, and then and then see where it goes from there. I think it's really, it should be a really casual conversation.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it starts before then, like, I think it starts with the relationship that you have with your supervisor. So you should start working out just to cultivate an open relationship with them. So like I said, me and my boss, we cool. So when Google reached out, I was like, hey, I sent her the email, like, look, this is who reached out to me. Or when Netflix reached out, I forwarded it right on to her, like, let her know, like, I'm not looking, but these are the companies that are trying to get me to come to them. And so we're always having a conversation, and that opens up to, when we have our one-on-ones, it's like, how can I challenge you? How can I develop you? What do you want to learn? How can you continue to grow? So once, if you don't have that relationship, by the time you get to a conversation like that you want to have, it may be awkward. So you want to start building that relationship beforehand.
So if a company gives you an offer without asking you what you're looking for, is it okay to say, is this negotiable? And if they say no without checking with their finance team, is that usually the case, or are they trying to see if this is something that you really want?
I don't ask anyone if anything is negotiable. I've gotten an offer without them asking me what I wanted to make, and it's not what I want, then I just go back and say, well, in my next role, well, let me back up. Don't even get to that point. Like, if they don't bring it up, if you go through an interview process, because I'm not gonna waste my time being away from work interviewing for a role that can't afford me. So don't even get to that point. When a recruiter or an HR person contacts you and tells you they want to talk to you about a job, you have the right in that first conversation to ask them, what does this role pay? And if they cannot answer you, it may be a problem. So yeah, I don't even you should never get to the final offer without having discussed the role or the budget at all.
Yeah, you.
So a lot of companies are trying to become more diverse, and in terms of like backgrounds and let's say that there's a role that you really want, and as well as the company knows that whatever team it is, it's not as diverse as they would wish it to be. How would you say that you have the skills too? How would you kind of balance yourself to not get too confident, knowing that, this is, as a person of color, they need this, or get too vulnerable to take, something because they also need that, if that makes any sense.
Well, I think you have to take the diversity component out of the picture, because you also don't know how many other diverse candidates are interviewing for the role. So you can't just assume that, oh, because I'm a black woman, they need me, because there may be 6 other black women that I'm going against. So you have to, while they may be looking at you as a diverse candidate, you should be looking at the job and the scope of the role and be confident in your skill sets and your background, and use that to make your case for why you should be in that role. Because I hate when people use diversity as a checkbox. Like, we don't have time, like, don't hire me because I'm black. Don't hire me because I'm a woman. Hire me because I'm good, okay, because I'm great at my job. So, and even if I know, and first, nobody should ever tell you that a team is lacking in diversity and that's why they're interviewing you, because that's just awful. Like, don't go there if they're hiring you to be the token. And if they're open with telling you that they're hiring you to be the token, then it's probably going to be a terrible work environment to work in. Yeah, but never, and I will say, like, in sports, we all know there's a lack of diversity in general in sports. So 9 times out of 10, you probably are going against Bobby, whose dad knows the team president, and Mark, whose dad grew up with the commissioner, or whatever. From an HR perspective, we are always trying to make sure that we present a diverse slate of candidates for each role. But again, you never want to be the person that's hired just because you're a diverse candidate, because you're already going in with the mark on your back as not being good for the role, and now you have to try to prove yourself and dig yourself out of a hole from the very beginning, and that's not a way to start any type of career.
All right, last question. Yeah.
Me?
Yeah.
You mentioned that sometimes it's like good to be grateful that you have a position, and when it comes to negotiating a raise, companies or employers might try to use that as an argument against you getting a raise. Like, they could have like a bunch of people lining up at the door to replace you at like any point. So like, what would be your counter to that response?
I find a new job.
Yeah.
Right, Deb?
Yeah, like I'm not, my gratefulness is the fact I come to work every day and I work hard. So me being grateful has nothing to do with you being underpaid. So if I go to my boss and I make a case for why I should make more money, and they tell me you should be grateful because I have a line of people outside, then I'm gonna find a new job and you can hire one of the people that's in the line waiting for this role.
I'd like to add to that too, and I think something that we don't realize enough, like, we're making them money. None of us in here are the CEOs, well, I can't speak for everybody, but like, you know, we're not the CEOs of these companies that we work for. So whether this company does good or bad, you know, my personal pocket isn't directly affected. Like, I'm not gonna lose everything if my company closes tomorrow. Like, I can go and get another job. So I think that's something, to Andrea's point, that we need to keep in mind is like, yes, I am grateful to be here, but also like, you should be grateful to have me because I do a damn good job and I'm making money. And I'm adding to your bottom line so you can continue to make money. So I think that's just, you know, things
Yeah,
that we need
and
to
always
think
know
about.
a company's most valuable assets are their people. So without their people, they wouldn't get what they get. And so it's one thing to say, you know, we may not can afford this budget and what you're asking for, but I'll see what we can do. And another thing to tell me that I shouldn't even ask them and I should be grateful for it. Yeah, that's not gonna work.
All right, any last final thoughts, feelings, anything? Okay.
I meant to ask this. So I went through the salary negotiation process. It was the first time I did it actually, but then I didn't know if I gave in too quickly. And I know you said you don't like the back and forth, but it was really kind of like, I know that I was, whatever they offered me, I was gonna come back with a counter offer. And I made my case as to why they should give me more. And they didn't give me, the max of what I was asking for, but they gave me something in the range. So I was thinking to myself, I wonder if I could, go back again and be like, well, X, Y, and Z, I don't know. So what should that conversation look like,
So whenever, I have buffers also, if I'm talking to a company, they ask me what I want to make, what my minimum is always, okay, so like if I want to make 160, then I tell them I want to make 160 to 175. I'm not going to tell them I want to make 150 to 160 because I want them, like, just like you got a buffer, I'm putting in a buffer to try to see if we can at least land halfway in between all of our buffers. But I think most importantly, it's being honest with yourself and knowing, like, don't play games with people in general. You don't want anyone playing games with you, so don't play games with the company. Know what you want to make. If they give you what you want to make, even a little more than what you want to make, and you know that that's logical and that's what makes sense for your level, then don't keep trying to push just to kind of see what you can get, because then it's off-putting, and then you look greedy, and then it's just a bad all-around thing. So it's like if you ask for something and they come up a little bit, and you ask again, and they're like, you're probably gonna have to either settle right there and be like, this is what I want to do. But if you set the expectation from the very, very beginning, then you don't even have to get into all of that later in the end. Like I said, so whatever what you really want, make that the minimum of your threshold, because they may come in a little under, but at least you've already buffered in a 10, 15K, and they'll kind of know. So you got to beat them at their game.
All right, well, I really want to thank Andria and Jasmine for coming down to Brooklyn and hanging out with us.